Hi, this is Dr. Nick. I'm the Incrementalist here with Incremental Insights for better business, better health.
And I'm Fred Goldstein with Accountable Health, here helping employers work with their employees to improve their overall health and benefits program. So, Nick, we're seeing a lot of attention paid to this study out of Israel talking about breakthroughs. And obviously, you get some of these clickbait headlines that you always talk about and things like that. So, what's really going on with that issue?
I can't be the only one that's singing the Queen song, Come On, the Breakthrough, right? I just can't. So breakthroughs, what are they? Well, they're, this happens with viruses. They mutate. We've talked about that in the past. And as they mutate, some of their capacity to overcome the body's immune systems works better. Essentially, it's this constant battle. We've been in a battle with all of these pathogens over the course of all of human history, and this is happening again. So what's happening with all of these variants? They occur as a natural consequence of the way that these viruses replicate, and there are hundreds of them. Not all of them are relevant. In fact, in the professional environment, we talk about variants of concern versus variants of interest. And those are the ones that are causing problem. We've certainly heard about B.1.1.7, also known as the UK variant, the South African variant. We try not to use places, but that's how everybody remembers them. It's a bit like naming not tornadoes.
You're talking about the Florida hurricane experience.
A hurricane naming convention. That's why we do it. But we try and use names that don't associate with the place, but they do associate with some poor person who then has to be associated. Anyway, separate issues. So the South African variant seems to be causing a little bit of concern. And there was a study, 8 people, very difficult to interpret because all the data isn't there. There seemed to be a preponderance of South African variant breakthrough. So they had the vaccination and they still got infected with COVID-19. But some things that play into this: 1, small number of people; 2, I think in all of those cases, they hadn't received the vaccine and had the opportunity for the immune system. So it was within 14 days. And we all know that you have to wait for an extended period of time, a minimum of 14 days. And that also depends on the sequencing, whether it's the second dose and so forth, to really retain the maximum level of immunity. And we also don't know what the outcome was. Did they get infected and have severe illness? And we think, based on trying to understand what was going on, that wasn't the case, which is normal. It's the same as getting the flu vaccine, still getting flu, but you get a milder version of it.
Interesting. So the only one question I would have for you, Nick, that could potentially be problematic with this is if there was some long COVID associated with that or something like that. But other than that, not a huge issue at this point.
I think that's a great point, Fred. And I think it's going to be the subject of a future conversation between us. We definitely need to talk about long COVID. Another interesting point, I know there was somebody or some group that tried to rename that to something else, but nobody's using it because we can't remember, but we all remember long COVID. Long
Right.
COVID, the long-term consequences of suffering the disease seems to be more associated with higher intensity infections, but we don't know. We'll talk about that in more detail, but you're right. There is some potential for that.
But still, again, it's a small number. It was 8 individuals, I understand, from that study.
Right, exactly. Small number of people. What else is going on?
Well, as you know, Florida is constantly doing this reopening, and we now just had a giant event here in Jacksonville, no masks required, 15,000 people at a big old wrestling tournament. So it'll be interesting to see. They did say that individuals were not complaining or harassing or either way, those wearing masks or those not wearing masks, but the vast majority were not. 15,000 in an indoor arena, packed in. I think it may seat a few thousand more than that, but it was packed. And we also had the, go ahead, the Boca Bash.
It's interesting to hear that because as I think about people that go to an event like that are wearing masks, so there's at least a mentality there. I wonder why they ended up going when all these other people weren't wearing masks.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and it'll be fascinating to see what comes out of this because they did mention that people came from a number of other states, so they were all coming. This is a big national event, first time that It's been done in over a year. Now, here's an interesting idea. We're seeing this vaccine hesitancy, and it suddenly crossed my mind. A lot of those wrestlers wear masks. So why couldn't they have made custom masks like the wrestlers' ones that were kind of cool and handed them out? Maybe it would be a way to incent a few more people who showed up to wear masks.
What a great idea. So that brings on the whole issue of vaccine hesitancy, which, you know, we're now in that mode at this point in the United States where we have lots of vaccine available. If you're over 16, pretty much, it's wide open, wider in some states than others. But essentially, the limits now are people's acceptance or willingness. How do we overcome that?
Yeah, it's a fascinating one. And I understand from the numbers this week that it's the first week we're seeing a drop in the total number of vaccines given. And it's one of, if you can't mandate it, and obviously there are major issues with mandating this kind of stuff, you've got to come up with some form of incentives, although how do you determine who has it, et cetera? But you'll see some restaurants and other places are going to require this, and I think that's sort of what needs to happen. Basketball games are talking about sections with it. There needs to be something to help other individuals understand the benefits to them and to all of us and to getting vaccinated and incent them in some way. Employers are doing it with some dollars and other things, but we need to make some broader approaches.
And I think the additional point here is, you know, shout out to all those community physicians, the general practitioners who work one-on-one, long-standing relationships with people in the community. They've supported them. They give them advice on what they should and shouldn't do from a health standpoint. Hey, stop eating that sugar. Gosh, you should do the following things to be healthier. And that's the same level of interaction that needs to occur to give people comfort. This is not a mandate issue. This is about explaining the pros and cons. And the fact that I wear a seatbelt in the car doesn't mean I'm not going to die in a car accident. It just means I'm taking the best precautions based on the evidence. And we need to help people understand that, because we as humans are terrible at assessing risk. And we have to help those individuals.
Absolutely. We've done that discussion on risk before, and it's something we have to do to help people get a better understanding of the risks and rewards of doing this and why it makes some sense. So once again, a fantastic week, Nick. If anyone has any questions, please come to accountablehealthllc.com. Reach out to us. We'd be happy to help you with this information. And we look forward to talking to you again next week.
And this is Dr. Nick. I'm the Incrementalist here with Incremental Insights for better business, better health.